Hi, I'm Betsy Styron, and I'm the president of the Center for Application of Psychological Type. And we are lucky enough today to have Elizabeth Murphy with us, who is the co-author of the MMTIC assessment, a personality assessment. And Elizabeth, it is wonderful to have you in Gainesville.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So that we can talk about the MMTIC and how to use type with children.
Great. One of my favorite topics.
And you are certainly experienced and expert in that field. So I'm curious, though, because I don't know that I've ever asked you this. How did you first get interested in psychological type and using it with children?
Well, when I discovered it for adults, I was already interested in looking for ways to make adult-child relationships better. And I was like, well, if this works for adults, surely it could work for children too. And because the child had to have the right to self-report, they needed a tool. And that's how the birth of the MTIC began, was to try to create a tool to let the kids discover the same joy of knowing who they are that adults got to know. I had 2 children of my own, I still do, and they would be taught concepts of type. And then they would start teaching their friends. And they would start telling their friends about type. And I figured, well, you know what? If you think this is important enough for you to share with your friends in your leisure time, then it had some underlying value for you that was real. And then it got to the point when my daughter went off to college her first year. She called me and she said, Mom, can you set up some of those MBTIs? I want to give them to some of my friends. And I said, honey, you're not eligible. You are not certified to use the tool. And she goes, but I understand it. I know what it's like. And I said, yes, and you're seeing that it has value for your friends too. And so let's figure how we can get you certified. And so after she graduated, she then did take the course so that she could also use type. When I first started using it with kids, it was amazing. There would be some people who would say, there's no way they can understand this stuff. But then every time you'd work with the children, they would clearly get it. Now, did they remember all the vocabulary? No. But they really understood how things work. And I think one of my favorite stories that started type was a story about the dog food cans at our house. My son has ESTP preferences. My husband had ISTJ preferences. And my daughter, INFJ. And they came home from grocery shopping, and my son, in his whatever style, was throwing the dog food cans in the cupboard any way they'd go. My husband, in his sense of order style, was cringing. My daughter, seeing the feeling side of her, noticing Dad cringing, turns to my young son and says, just put them in Daddy's way. He looks at my husband and says, oh yeah, sure. And he turns him and faces them all label front. Now,
that's a great story.
He didn't know that he was responding to type, but he clearly understood his natural way wasn't the same as my husband's natural way. But my daughter's sensitivity to those were able to communicate a pattern that all of a sudden fixed a problem. And it wasn't a discipline or a respect issue. It was just simply if I could have done it my way, they would have just gone in. But if you need them another way, sure, I can accommodate. So when little things like that would happen, it convinced me that type is real for kids, and it would be actually cruel in my mind to withhold a tool that could help them become better at who they are when they're young. Why do we have to wait till we're 40 to get to know how wonderful we are?
That's absolutely so. And when the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator was created, really it was mostly for adults. And so until you had the idea to develop an assessment that measured type in children, that rounded out the whole circle. So a whole family could be involved, so the parents know their type, and then when they take the MMTIC, the children now know their type.
Right.
And so everyone in the whole family can understand each other, one another better. A question: if you have a family of 5, how often do you have the differences that you had in your own family?
Well, we were kind of unique because we had 4 totally different approaches to the world. And there are families that I've worked with where 3 of the family will all share a common type, and then another child will not. And when the parents both share the same type, like I had a case where both parents preferred ISTJ, and they were blessed enough to have an ESFP daughter. But that ESFP style and approach to life, to them, didn't look prepared, didn't look organized, didn't look ready to get things done every day in the same way that they would get done. So type gave them a way of finding what was wonderful about her and holding her accountable for all the family rules and all the family values. And one of the most important things that families with these differences learn is that I'm not abandoning my value that everybody sit down to dinner, or that everybody be on time and be ready to leave the house when it's time to go, but that your way of getting ready to leave the house and their way of getting to leave the house could be so different that the only rule is, if it's noon and we said we're leaving at noon, are you ready to go at noon? Not, did you prepare the way I would have prepared? And it's also helpful when we give parents a way of looking at things, so that if the child says something so outlandish, you could say, well, that is one perspective. Can I share another with you? And then we can talk about which one might be a better one for you to choose, so that the power and the autonomy of the child remains with the child when they have the right to make the choice. But sometimes they need information to make wise choices. And sometimes parents who don't understand that will think that a child's right to choose means we just leave them with the resources they currently have, where type allows us to give them more resources so they can choose more wisely.
Do you find that you, with your own children and the people that you teach type 2, do they learn to frame their questions or directions to the child so that the child either understands better or changes their behavior in some way?
I think they learn to ask the questions and phrase the discipline in less threatening ways. But they also learn to phrase things so that it works well for them. For instance, I had a mom who was a J preference and a son who had a perceiving preference. This is not my story, but it is another family story. And the mother would say to the child on Friday, you need to hurry up and get your homework done so you can relax all weekend. Well, that perceiving child had no need to get the homework done on Friday night, because I have till Sunday night to do it. But the judging parent would use the language of, but you need to, so you will be able to relax. So all we did was reframe the language for the parent to say, my job as your parent is to check your homework, and I can't enjoy my weekend until I have finished that job. So homework has to be done Friday night so I can enjoy the rest of my weekend. Well, now the child said, okay, because I'm meeting your need. When the parent was saying you need to, the child was canceling that out as, but that's not true. I don't need to. So sometimes it isn't even in making it easier for the child or changing the task at all, as much as making clear for the child, why are you really doing this? It's like, yeah.
Do you find that parents have a hard time adjusting to the differences and wanting the parent wants the child to be more like them?
I don't find that as much. I think the hardest thing was that parents have to sort what is a discipline issue from what is a type issue. Because when it's a type difference, you want to accommodate it. You want to enrich it. You want to allow it to grow, and so the child can become the best at their way. When it's a discipline issue, the child's doing something wrong, and they need to be told, stop it. So helping the parent to be able to identify the style at reaching the objective is allowable. Not reaching the objective or doing something inappropriate is not. And so that should deserve a consequence.